Hello friends, and welcome to my channel, to Conversations with Elias Amare. My guest today is Dr. Hermon Berhane Ogbamichael from Cape Town in South Africa. He's a senior lecturer at the Cape Town Peninsula University of Technology, CPUT. He's also head of the journalism program there. He's very active in Pan-African associations in South Africa. By origin, he's Eritrean. And we are going to talk about the South African elections and its political ramifications, prospects for moving forward in a coalition government. Dr. Hermon, welcome to my show.
Thanks for inviting me, Elias.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So please explain to us in brief the results of the elections that were held last week, a week ago, on May 29. What happened? What is the result now? And then we'll talk in the next phase about prospects for moving forward.
Yeah, the results were a bit astonishing. Actually, the ANC, when it came into power in 1994, they had about 70% of the votes because of it could be the euphoria of the new democratic dispensation, and the first president was President Nelson Mandela. So those could have had some effects at the time. But later on, the votes have been declining from time to time. In the last 5 years ago, in the last election, ANC had about 58%, but now declined to 40.6%. The two reasons could be there are two parties that formed outside of the ANC. Their leadership was from the ANC itself. One is the Economic Freedom Party, led by Julius Malema, and the other one is the new party that formed last year in September 2023, called Mkhonto weSizwe, or MK Party. And this party is the paramilitary wing of the ANC that was formed in 1961 as part of the liberation of the South Africans that fought against apartheid. So many veterans and many South Africans have associated themselves, especially those who were even some members of the ANC, that this MK party has some sort of good memory in liberation, and it's led by the famous former president Jacob Zuma. So he has also a massive support within the ANC itself, and also people who are not members of the ANC, especially in his ground there in the KwaZulu-Natal province.
His political base.
Yeah, so the ANC could only achieve the 40.6%. They lost. And they declined by 18%, which is massive. because
a huge political blow, would you say, for ANC?
It is indeed. But naturally, it was predicted or expected, especially with the new MK party emerging, because it was known that many people actually would vote also for
what percentage of the votes did MK garner? Is it 14%?
They garnered about 15%. Yeah,
15%. So that's significant.
Significant number. Even it's 6% more compared to EFF. I think EFF only garnered about 9%.
9 point some, yes. And this new party, MK, of course, that vote is being taken away from ANC. Traditionally, I mean, those who voted for MK in the past 30 years used to vote for ANC. Would that be a fair assumption?
A fair assumption, fair enough.
Okay. So now we are where we are. Talk now of the prospects of the only prospect now is to form a government of national unity or a coalition government based on the constitution, because there's no clear winner with a clear majority over 50%, 50 plus 1. So according to the South African constitution, they have to form a coalition government. So who is going to form coalition with whom? What are the prospects for this, the indications, at least the political talks behind the scene or wheeling and dealing negotiations that are going on? What do they indicate?
There are internal conversations within the party and between the parties or among the parties themselves. So the ANC most probably can only align itself or have some sort of power sharing deal with MK or Mkhonto Sizwe or EFF. But there is some sort of resistance from MK's leader, the former President Jacob Zuma, because I think it has to do with some personal tensions between him and the current President Cyril Ramaphosa, based on because he's been to court. So he feels that President Cyril Ramaphosa had a big hand in putting him in jail, taking him back and forth in courts, even though he gave him clemency, pardoning him when there was a national clemency that was given to about 1,000 prisoners. So most probably then ANC might have a deal with EFF, but EFF seems to suggest that the ANC is in a tight corner, so they humbled the ANC actually for the ANC to approach them for coalition government. So there is that possibility, but DA also suggested, the DA's leader John Steinheisen said they might also be able to have some sort of power sharing deal or coalition with the ANC. But some ANC members, including some higher senior members of the ANC, like Ms. Lindiwe Sisulu, the former minister who is now in the cabinet anyway, she suggests that having a coalition with DA is just, according to her, to create a mini apartheid. She feels that there will be some of the ideologies and policies eroded as the result of the coalition. So she believes that having a coalition with ANC, with DA, is sort of
Unthinkable.
a betrayal, a betrayal of what they fought for in this country. Yeah.
So there's naturally that kind of resistance. And if there are those who also say that if the ANC enters into coalition with the DA, then that would be the end of ANC as we know it. It would lead to further disintegration, further eroding of support from the masses, popular support, and eventually this would be the seed that would lead to its demise. That's what some analysts are saying. Would you agree with that analysis or that assessment?
Well, that is what the perception is. If DA has got a power sharing deal with the ANC, or if they have a coalition, then they believe that the ideologies of DA and the policy of DA might supersede over the ideologies of the ANC and their policies. For example, the land is a central issue in the country, and the ANC believes on the expropriation of land, but on the other side, the DA resists that. They believe that that would create chaos in the country, like what happened in Zimbabwe, or what happened in Venezuela. That's according to them.
Of course, the DA is a center-right party, a party of the privileged white that controls the economy of South Africa, the land. So naturally, they would not look. They would be against the expropriation of farmlands from the whites to be given to the African peasants.
Definitely.
How about then of the prospects? One prospect is ANC and MK forming an alliance to form a coalition government. Naturally, with the 40.6% of ANC plus 14 to 15% of that would top them over 50%. It will be about 55%. How about the other option is forming coalition with EFF, which has only 9%. I don't think it has 10%, which would be less than 50%. But there are other smaller parties with 2-3% of the votes, such as the Patriotic Alliance, PA, or the Inkatha Freedom Party. So talk about that prospect of coalition also, with EFF being the lead, but other smaller parties.
Yeah, for example, DA has signed a pact with about 10 smaller parties. There are about 70 parties that contested in these elections. So there are some parties that might have got 1% or 2% or 0 point whatever percent, 3%. So if they have got some similarities in terms of their policies, they might form or have some sort of agreement or sign a pact with these smaller parties as well. Yeah. So the ANC has the possibility to do that. But they haven't mentioned any of the smaller parties yet. Yeah. Actually, the DA has started having this kind of coalition last year, actually, far ahead of time. There were about, I think, 7 parties that they signed for coalition or had a pact for coalition last year. So they were more proactive in their approach. So the ANC has also that possibility of aligning itself putting those smaller parties into the coalition.
Also, it is to be remembered that in previous elections at the local level, municipalities, either city level or provincial, maybe not provincial, but district level, the ANC had formed a coalition with EFF, Julius Malema's EFF, right?
Are you saying that if they are...
They had already an experience of coalition, not at the national level, at the national parliament level, but at local levels, city levels. I believe in Johannesburg, for instance.
I think in Johannesburg, what I know of is there was some sort of a coalition government at a local level between ANC and DA. It's like in Tswana, for example.
Okay, not EFF.
I don't think. I think yes, in some municipalities, in some local administrations, the EFF and ANC have worked together. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but not
there are
national.
those also who say that the extremist left position or Marxist, Leninist, Fanonian, Pan-Africanist position of EFF and its leader Julius Malema, who at one time himself was the leader of the youth wing, the youth league of the ANC before he was expelled in 2012. That left, extreme left, some might say, of the ANC position renders him inflexible to enter into compromise with his former comrades in the ANC. Would that be true, or is he amenable to forming coalition at the higher level, at the parliamentary level now, to form a government?
Well, I have to just admit that the personality of Julius Malema is naturally, if you notice, that he's stubborn when it comes to his principles. So it's very, very difficult to bend him to your own principles or to your own interests.
And some say also unpredictable.
Yeah, he could be also unpredictable in his approach at times. But usually he has been very consistent in his principles, and he has had integrity in terms of where to actually to stand, especially when it comes to land issue, when it comes to Black economic empowerment, when it comes to Pan-Africanism as well. So he has some principles that he will never compromise. Yes, the unpredictability is there were times that he said that he would never leave ANC, but he left ANC and he formed his party. But that is a political process anyway. I mean, people, usually politicians can see what interests them and can change. That is the unpredictability of politics. However, in terms of his stance, he's standing on some principles, on some policies.
When it comes to core principles, he stands fast by them.
It's very difficult to compromise with him. Yeah.
Okay, but then the question also arises that the EFF being an older party, MK is just a new kid on the block. It was just formed a few months ago. The EFF has been formed over 10 years ago. It's been in parliament. It's been around. It's not a new kid in the block. And yet it was not able to climb up from the 10% range. Whereas the MK quickly ascended to 14% level. And it even won the second most populous province, KwaZulu-Natal, handily, by a big majority. So would that indicate that Malema and his EFF still have not done their political homework and have not built a solid base in the black masses, in the black African masses?
Not that. Malema has done a good campaign, a good job for his party, and he maintained to have more or less the same votes that he got last time. But the main reason for MK winning more votes is the popularity of Jacob Zuma.
Mm-hmm.
So his popularity actually garnered this 15% votes. There is no other reason. If Zuma was not in that party, then they wouldn't have garnered such number of votes. So the popularity played a big part.
A role, yes. Okay. The prospects of the three of them, the three parties who emerged out of the ANC itself, MK, and then EFF, forming a bloc or a coalition. How does that look?
Three of them, yes, they have similarities in terms of their policies. As I've said also, they just came out of ANC and formed those two parties. But I think it needs some sort of negotiation and compromise in how they would share
personalities with somewhat big egos.
Yes, exactly. It will have to do to some extent with the leadership of with each of these parties. You know, Jacob Zuma has his own personality. Julius Malema has his own personality. The president has also his own personality. So those personalities need to be cool-headed and to negotiate, putting their individual personalities
within these 2 weeks. Some say also that a demand that Zuma can put forward is for the resignation of Ramaphosa as a leader of the ANC, and because they have animosities, personal animosities with the court issue, his imprisonment. He's not actually going to parliament. By law, he's prohibited from
National Assembly
or the parliament. So he'll be sitting this out this term, but he's still the leader of the party outside. What do you make of this? Would this mean it's the end of Ramaphosa in the ANC? Exit Ramaphosa and another leader coming in?
Well, it would not be easy for him to just leave. I mean, but there is also a speculation that some people are suggesting that the deputy president, Paul Mashatile, maybe will have to take over. And Ramaphosa should be out.
Step aside.
Step aside, because they believe that President Ramaphosa hasn't done quite well in
himself also is implicated or accused of some corruption issues, right?
Yeah. Again, there is this Pala case, even EFF, because one of their demands. Now, Julius Malema said that he will raise also the issue of Pala. I mean, he wants that investigation to continue. So that's what I'm saying. So there are some personal issues that will affect President Ramaphosa, like the Pala saga. And they bring that as one of the issues, especially the EFF. I haven't heard MK mentioning that, but the EFF, Julius Malema mentioned that as one of the demands that he has been making over the last few years.
Fair enough. Okay, we're about to wrap up this session, but I would like you to address interrelated questions. One, the alliance that had carried the ANC this far, tripartite alliance, you could say, between COSATU, the South African Communist Party, and ANC. How does it stand now? Within the labor movement, the trade unions, NUMSA, the metal workers union, has split off from COSATU, I think. What are the implications for the political base of the ANC in that regard? And finally, this defeat of the ANC, what are its implications for Africa, for the Pan-African progressive movement in Africa, and for, the global geopolitical dynamics, its implications for BRICS and the multipolar world order that is emerging?
Well, as you said, there was a tripartite alliance between the ANC, the COSATU, the Confederation of South African Trade Unions, and SACP, South African Communist Party. There is a massive base unions and members that the ANC has support from these members of COSATU. And there is also an ideology related support, policy support from South African Communist Party. But as you have said, NUMSA, one of the biggest trade unions, the metal workers trade unions, broke off or split from the ANC just because of the Marikana massacre in the mining. I think it was 2013. So now the ANC should actually continue having this support from both COSATU or South African Communist Party. But losing both this, both the party and the trade union would have a very massive effect, which means they will lose also more members because COSATU is one of the biggest trade unions. It's a federation of many trade unions in the country. Now the implication in Africa and the continent, the African National Congress has always been a Pan-Africanist, having with a good sense of African unity, promoting peace and trying to promote a good diplomacy, economic development in the continent. To some extent, also, they have a good standing in the Security Council.
It's also an old party, over 100 years, 112 years old. Let's not forget that.
Exactly. And
founded in
very experienced party, very popular in South Africa, in Africa, and in the world, because the ANC is also associated with Nelson Mandela and other struggle heroes like Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo and so on. So these people are also very popular, and that's why the ANC also very popular in that case. Yeah, and if the ANC fought against apartheid, against racism, against discrimination, that stands out also.
It also recently spearheaded the bringing the Zionist Israel regime on genocide charges at the International Court of Justice at The Hague. Let's not forget.
Yeah, and bringing this Israeli bombing, Israeli genocide in Gaza or over Palestinians also, and they won the case in International Criminal Court. So there is popularity with all these things happening, and it's the ANC also brought this country to be part of BRICS. So being part of BRICS itself is part of multilateralism, where many countries are trying to even to join, in actually trying to make the world multilateral than the unilateral world, where it is only to be under Western hegemony, especially the US or the West in general. So the strong ANC usually is equated to a stronger Africa. Because it's one of the African liberation movements, and it always advances the interests of the Pan-Africanism. Now, as I have said, also globally, the multilateral issue, the ANC government usually believes on multilateralism, whether it is in the Security Council or whether it is in the global economic sectors or the political scenario in the world. So all this accumulated. So I would just say that a stronger ANC is a stronger Africa and a better approach to the world power dynamics in terms of multilateralism.
Okay. Thank you. Quick answer. We're about to wrap up. Will the ANC emerge from this defeat or political failure? Will it deeply look inward, make critical assessments of its shortcomings, of why the masses are no longer supporting it, do the self-criticism and emerge revitalized and rejuvenated as a strong vanguard party? What are the prospects for it?
Yeah, yes, I would say so. Well, the ANC will need to have a critical reflection, a critical self-assessment of why they lost actually some votes. Why are people not voting for the ANC? I mean, there are some issues in the country that people have been asking that they needed to be addressed. Unemployment is one of the biggest problems in the country, with I think over 32% the youth, the working force do not have a job. The energy crisis, what we call load shedding, has been another problem in the country. Again, there is crime. I mean, a lot of issues.
Security issue, yes.
Yes. So there is also this gender-based violence or domestic violence people have been talking about. And
the major issue of corruption itself, state capture and
state corruption of the senior officials, including the president, is also implicated in the Pala saga. So, and other officials. Those issues need self-reflection. If these issues are addressed, and also service delivery as well, then the ANC, if they work on this with utmost priority, then they can come back well in the next election.
Well, we've heard from the Secretary General of ANC after the results of the election, the defeat, that he acknowledged, and he said, "We have heard you. We have heard your voices, and we're going to make the necessary change." I think so. That indicates that within the party itself, there is talk of the need to assess, like you said, the shortcomings and chart a way forward with a new vision. But I think we have dealt with adequately within the allotted time the elections and the ramifications, implications for the continent, as well as the global geopolitical dynamics. Dr. Hermon Berhane Ogbamichael, I thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure, sir. This brings our episode, the Conversations with Elias Amare, to an end. Until next time, I'm Elias Amare.